Everybody. Good morning. Let's talk about music. My earliest memories are music. They are musical. And of course, music can communicate long before we learn language. And I remember lying in my crib as an infant, and my moods were really affected by what my sister was playing. Now, she was 5 years older, and she was a near prodigy on piano. Of course, she was playing all of the Chopin and the Beethoven, the usual stuff. And man, I'm telling you, it really, they affected my mood. Some of them were dark and haunting, like Moonlight Serenade, Sarah Marmalade. Others were really uplifting. Claire de Lune, I still love the way that one sounds. But note that once we learn language, all of our thoughts start to consist of language. And that very fact sort of removes us from that Zen state of living entirely in the moment because we're kind of transcribing in our mind, in language, what we're thinking and what we're doing. And we think in terms of language, right? Unless we're in that zone that I was talking about earlier, where you're completely free, you're living in the moment, whether it's music or whether it's driving a race car or making love, you're all in one place at the same time. And it's that innocent state I think that dogs exist in. That's why they can be in a big fight, and a moment later they're happy. They don't care. They don't even remember the fight. They're in the moment. So there was music all around in the house, and my dad was a professional musician. In fact, he was trained to be a navigator in the Army Air Force for World War II, and just before his first flight across the pond to Germany, they found out he played saxophone. And so they pulled him aside and said, look, we need saxophone players more than we need navigators. So you're in the band. Now, I might not be here if it weren't for his saxophone playing, because, as you know, a whole lot of those guys playing in those plane flights to Germany, those bombing runs, they never came back. All right, so he played sax in the big bands. He was an arranger. He had a radio show for a little while in the Bay Area, and he was the first chair clarinet player in the Oakland Symphony. And it was interesting because when he was dying, I was out at the racetrack ready to get into the car, and I got this frantic phone call, your dad's in the hospital, he's not going to last. So two things. Thomas said, well, what do you want me to do with the car? And I said, you drive it. It's just a practice session or a qualifying race. Just put my helmet on. They won't be able to tell it's not me. He did, and he went out and won in the Lotus 7. So I go over to the hospital, and I said, your dad's in bad shape. He's been here for a couple of days. He won't eat, and he won't talk. I think he's trying to die. He's trying to pass on. And he was old, and his time was up. So I go in there. He's whistling. I said, Dad, what's that? And he said, that's Mozart's clarinet concerto in A major. And then he opens his eyes, he sees Suzanne, and he goes, hey, baby, hey, me and you, let's Scooby-Doo. And he passed away a few hours later. And I thought, man, if you can go out with music in your mind, a little humor, and an appreciation for the fine, fair sex, what more could a guy ask for? So here's to you, Dad. Thanks a lot. Now, I wanted to play sax because I've got this theory that all of us who are really affected by music probably had an experience where one particular piece of music really nailed it for us, and it shaped us. And that's certainly the case with me. It was Paul Desmond in the Dave Brubeck Quartet, and he was playing alto sax. And I thought Dave Brubeck was the sax player because it's all about the sax part. It's a tune called Makin Time, and it's on YouTube. I encourage you guys, if you're interested, to go look at it. There's a few versions. The best version is the one that's got a black kind of picture with the quartet standing there. Joe Dodge, On drums, Bob Baitzer, a couple of Bay Area guys, as Brubeck was. Any rate, it's great. It is a stunning piece of music, and I played that over and over and over and over and over as an 8-year-old kid. It just killed me, I played that for Dougie West. And he said to me later on, he said, and this was like 80 years, 50 years later, and he said, man, if I had heard that when I was 8 years old, I think that would have influenced me completely differently. At any rate, rock and roll hadn't been invented yet. And my dad was teaching me jazz to hear it at any rate. He was saying, now listen to this, Count Basie, listen to that. That's off the offbeat. And then he's showing me some music because I'm starting to play a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself, but on the music, it started with a rest. And I said, Dad, how can you start with a rest? And he said, that's jazz. It's syncopated. It always starts with a rest. And then it begins. And it was like, wow, that's hard to grasp. At any rate, he said, okay, son, you're going to play clarinet. And I said, no, I want to play saxophone. And he said, no, you have to learn clarinet. That's the basis of the whole woodwind reed instrument family. Once you can play that, you'll be able to pick up sax in no time at all. So, okay, I want to play like this Benny Goodman sextet sessions. They're really hip stuff, and it's great jazz. No, you're going to play the open note of B natural, long tones until I'm satisfied that you can play that note. And then I'll teach you the next note. Well, what he was teaching me, again, I'm just a little kid. He's teaching me how to listen, how to hear tone, and then how to get tone. Because, a horn is a very intimate instrument. It really is a substitute for singing in a way. So what really became important to me was later on, I wanted to play sax again, alto sax. And when Bendinelli and I were building all the amps in Lagunitas, man, we were listening to nothing but Charlie Parker. 8-10 hours a day. It was nothing but Bird, everything that Bird ever played. But man, I mean, it was just killing me. It was so cool. So I had an alto sax, and I also had a friend from Berkeley who was a super musician, Louis Aisen, A-I-S-E-N. A lot of people thought, oh, Louie, he is so arrogant and all that. No, to my mind, he was fully worthy. The only trouble with Louie, well, let me back up. Okay, so Louie could play piano like Oscar Peterson. Louie could play Hammond organ like Jimmy Smith. Louie's main instrument, or his first one, I guess, was guitar, which he could play like, who am I trying to think of? The great jazz player, Monk. Oh, shit, I'm having a senior moment here. But he was playing alto sax, and I said, Louie, man, I never heard you play alto. You're murdering it here. And I said, how long have you been playing? He said, less than a year. And I said, less than a year? How did you do that? And he said, well, I know music. I play 8-10 hours a day. And I know all of the chords, I know all of the tunes, I know music. So all I have to do is learn the instrument, the zen of the instrument. That's what I'm trying to learn, is the zen of the instrument. So I'm following Cannonball around, Cannonball Adderley. He was still alive. And I'm looking at I said, okay, Louie, I want a lesson. I'm going to pay you for a sax lesson because what you're doing is incredible here. I can't believe it. So I'm in Lagunitas, he's in Berkeley, and I'm warming up, and he's coming up the steps to the log pad, and he can hear me playing. He comes up and says, oh, that's great, you can improvise. I can't teach that. You either can or you can't. And this was the interesting thing about my father. He could not improvise. He could read anything. Great, the first time through flawlessly, couldn't improvise. You take the paper away, stops dead. I always thought that was weird. Now, I got kicked out of piano lessons as a 5-year-old for the crime of playing by ear. Now, pardon me, but I always thought music was an auditory experience. So playing by ear seemed to me that's it, right? That's what we're playing. No, you follow and my dad would say, no, you didn't hold that note long enough. Look, that's 4 beats. What, you don't like that note? So I was like, oh, geez, this is following the rules. I don't want to do that. So anyway, Louie says, man, you can improvise. That's great. That can't be taught. but man, your tone, you sound like a pinched up white boy. And I said, well, hello, that's me, all right. And he said, no. Did you ever take clarinet lessons? I said, yeah, my dad was a concert guy. Okay, that's the problem. You got that French embouchure. He said, look, we're already at a disadvantage because we got these skinny little white boy lips. And so what you have to do is you have to play on the inside skin here. It's a very intimate thing. And he gave me a little sexual concept of how you're supposed to make love to the mouthpiece, not in a homosexual way, in a very heterosexual way. And then he was saying, okay, let me hear you play the bridge to One Note Samba. But play it in D flat. And I said, oh, geez, dude, Louie, come on. He said, what? There's only 12 keys. You can't just play in all of them? And I said, oh, man, come on, Louie. He said, okay, play in the standard key. So I start playing, and I get about halfway through. Stop. Just play a B flat. And I'm standing there. Okay, stop playing the B flat. Just stand there and hold the horn as though you're playing a B flat. Oh, man, put the horn down. Let me just see you stand and breathe. Oh, man. Get a paper and pencil. Let's start at the beginning. So, see, this was the zen of the horn. This was the zen of music, and it actually applies to guitar just as well. And he says, put your shoulders back, put your head back, get a straight column of air. Now, soften your knees. No, flex your knees a little bit more. No, rotate your hips. No, flex your knees. And then he says the key point. He says, no, God damn it, point your asshole straight at the center of the earth, because that's where tone begins. Now, I want you to remember that, because that is key. And that actually fit in with the racing later on, which we'll get to some more of the racing stories where that really fits right in, believe it or not. So then the next little lesson he gave me, he said, do you have perfect pitch? And I said, sorry. He said, well, you got relative pitch. I said, yeah, everybody can hear an octave. And he said, oh, you can, huh? And I said, yeah. So he whips out his Con Strobo tuner. He says, okay, play an F. No vibrato. Just hold it, get it steady right there. Okay, that's good. Now play it an octave higher. And he covers the screen. Oh, you think that's an octave, huh? And I said, yeah. He says, go back to the earlier. So now go back up an octave, and he's covering the screen. You sure that's an octave, huh? And I said, well, yeah. You hit it again, and then he pulls his hand off, and it's way sharp. And he says, don't worry. Everybody hears sharp. Everybody hears sharp on horns, especially on saxophones. And man, this little band I was playing in, I ended up arguing with one of the older guys because he kept saying, oh, you're flat. And I said, no, I'm sorry, Louie. This is a different Lou. I said, no. In fact, I told him this. And I said, hey, I'm going to lend you this strobe tuner. And he came back and said, holy shit, I've been playing clarinet for 50 years and I've been sharp all of the time. Oh, my God. So Wes Montgomery, that's the guitar player. And here's the thing about Louie. This is why, because he would play in a band. And whatever instrument he would say, he would go to the guy and he said, well, could you play, the guy on the piano, could you play something like this? And the guy goes, holy shit, I wish I could. And he would go to the guy on the guitar. He said, you know what I'm thinking would sound right? Play something like this. And the guitar player's going, fuck, how can you play better on every instrument than we can on one instrument? At any rate, there are some people that are just born real musicians. The rest of us, like me, I enjoy music. I love it, but the other thing is I don't have 8 to 10 hours a day to do it. And that's what my dad said, too. I said, how much time do you spend playing? He said, well, when I was coming up, I spent all day playing, like 8, 9 hours. And then I'd go out on the job and play another 4 to 5 hours every day, or 5 or 6 days. So, no, I don't have that. I'm building amplifiers and houses and trying to scuffle a living here. So, then play your long tones and try to get that intonation right, looking at that strobo tuner. So I get tired of bored just playing long tones. So I start one morning and I'm playing basically the melody to Body and Soul, but I'm doing it super slowly, making each note like a long tone. Um, and the next day, and this is Lagunitas, the houses are pretty far apart. I run into my neighbor next door, who's a top jazz bass player in the Bay Area, Joe Carroll, and he said, "What was that I was hearing? Was that Body and Soul?" And I said, "Oh, geez, Joe, I'm sorry. I didn't think you could. I didn't think you could hear that." And he said, "That was you?" And I said, "Well, yeah. Again, I'm sorry." And he said, "No, that was you. You were playing that?" And I said, "Yeah." "Why?" And he said, "Well, because it sounded like a big fat black man on junk." Now, if you're a skinny white boy who's trying to put his toe in the lexicon of jazz, there can't be much of a bigger compliment than sounding like a big fat black man. Whether he's on junk or not, I guess because I was playing it so slowly, that's where the junk came from. Well, I don't know how long this has gone on, but I've always enjoyed these reminiscences. And I hope you have too, because if you don't, the next one's free. And maybe it'll talk about more than something that maybe you're more interested in. But in my life, what's interesting is this Zen state, learning from everybody that I possibly can, no matter what. If that guy knows something I want to know about, shut up and listen to the guy. That's the way. Don't try to convince him that you know as much or more than he does. Just shut up and listen. See if you can't learn something from that cat. At any rate, that's why I can remember this stuff, is because it was really meaningful. And so this is fun for me. And I really appreciate the feedback that I'm getting from you guys. Oh, I love my amp, or oh man, this guy's a great storyteller. Whatever it is, it's really gratifying for me, because we settled. We had my fireman party with all of the Boogie guys, uh, which included John Petrucci, Bill Champlin. Oh man, the list went on. All of the Boogie people, past, present, and what a wonderful life I've had. It's really been spectacular. So thank you all, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.